Have you ever wondered why, sometimes, the most powerful way to reclaim your peace is not through confrontation, but through silence? What if the quiet exit, the moment when an empath chooses to withdraw emotionally, is not a sign of weakness but the most devastating form of revenge? Welcome to Jungian Soul Secrets, where we dive deep into the psychology of Carl Jung, uncovering how the empath's retreat forces others to face truths they'd rather avoid. If you're ready to explore the hidden power of your own boundaries, make sure to subscribe to this channel and begin your journey of self-discovery with us. Part 1. Why the empath's quiet exit is the most brutal revenge. In a world that constantly demands more, the empath is often the one who gives everything. They're the listeners, the healers, the ones who absorb the pain of others without question. But what happens when the empath, who has spent years pouring their energy into others, finally chooses to step back? The answer lies in what Carl Jung would describe as the withdrawal of projections. This quiet exit isn't just a retreat. It's a powerful and at times brutal form of psychological liberation. An empath's role is typically misunderstood. They are seen as endlessly giving, always present, always ready to support and heal. The world expects them to be available, to take on the emotional burdens of those around them. However, this can be exhausting, and more often than not, the empath becomes lost in the identities and emotional needs of others. Their own sense of self becomes fractured, buried beneath the weight of other people's emotions. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow comes into play. The shadow is the unconscious part of ourselves that we reject or deny, often because it represents qualities we deem undesirable. For empaths, their shadow is the part of themselves that yearns for self-care, boundaries, and personal space. The empath, who has spent so long fulfilling the needs of others, might not even recognize this part of themselves. Their identity becomes enmeshed with their role as the caregiver, the helper, the one who is always available. But what happens when the empath, after years of self-sacrifice, finally decides to step away? The quiet exit. It's not loud, it's not filled with accusations or dramatic confrontations. Instead, it's a deliberate choice to stop playing the role others have assigned them. The empath withdraws. They stop responding to emotional demands, stop being the emotional anchor for those who have relied on them. In this silence, the truth begins to reveal itself. For the people who have taken the empath's presence for granted, this withdrawal is often devastating. The empath's absence is a mirror, reflecting the truth of the relationship, one that was built on imbalance. The empath was never seen as a person in their own right, but as a function, a source of emotional support. This unspoken contract, where the empath provided care while others gave nothing in return, is suddenly broken. Carl Jung understood the power of withdrawal and its ability to force others to confront their own unconscious patterns. In his work, he often spoke of the need to integrate the shadow, to confront the parts of ourselves that we hide. The empath's quiet exit forces others to do just that. It's not the empath's absence that hurts the most, but the truth it reveals. The individuals who once relied on the empath for emotional regulation now have to face their own emotional turmoil, their own shadow. This is why the empath's quiet exit is so brutal. It's not about revenge in the traditional sense. There's no anger, no confrontation, no shouting. It's simply a withdrawal of emotional labor. And in doing so, the empath becomes the catalyst for a deeper transformation. The people left behind are forced to confront their own emotional needs, to recognize how much they depended on the empath's energy to avoid their own inner work. Jung's psychology suggests that true individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, requires confronting and integrating the shadow. When the empath withdraws, they are not abandoning those they love. Rather, they are offering them a chance to face their own darkness. It's a painful process, but it's necessary for growth. By withdrawing, the empath is teaching others the importance of self-sufficiency and emotional independence. The quiet exit doesn't punish. It frees. It's a powerful form of psychological sovereignty. Jung often spoke about the importance of creating healthy boundaries, especially for sensitive individuals. The empath's journey of individuation requires that they set boundaries to protect their own well-being. These boundaries, while difficult to establish, allow the empath to reclaim their personal power. No longer are they a receptacle for others' emotions. Instead, they become a conscious individual, fully in charge of their own psychological space. This transformation is not without its challenges. The empath may feel guilt, especially if they've been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to their ability to help others. But as Jung teaches, the process of individuation involves letting go of old patterns, of shedding the skin of the person you were to become the person you were always meant to be. The empath's quiet exit is a step in that direction, a step toward reclaiming their own soul. It's important to understand that the quiet exit is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. It's about changing the way the empath interacts with the world. It's about letting go of the need to please others, to constantly seek approval or validation. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The empath's quiet exit is the first step in this lifelong journey of self-actualization. The impact of this exit is profound, not just for the empath, but for everyone involved. Those who were once reliant on the empath's emotional labor are now forced to confront their own shadow. They may feel anger, confusion, or even resentment, but these emotions are not directed at the empath. They are projections of their own unconscious fears. In this way, the empath's quiet exit becomes a powerful tool for self-awareness, not just for the empath, but for everyone in their orbit. This is the brilliance of Jung's understanding of the unconscious. He recognized that in order to heal, we must confront the parts of ourselves we have hidden away. The empath, through their quiet exit, forces others to do just that. They may never fully understand the depth of what the empath is offering them, but they will never forget the silence. And that silence will echo through their lives, a constant reminder of the emotional imbalance that once existed between them. As difficult as it may be for the empath to walk away, they must understand that this is not a rejection. It is an invitation for others to wake up to their own needs, to recognize their own power, and to begin their own journey of individuation. The empath's quiet exit is not the end of the relationship. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one that requires each person to stand alone in their own truth. Jung's philosophy teaches us that true growth comes from within. The empath's quiet exit is a necessary step in this process. It is a form of self-preservation, a way to reclaim one's energy and sense of self, and for those who are willing to face their own darkness, it can be a moment of transformation. So the next time you find yourself feeling the pull to withdraw, to pull back from relationships that drain you, remember that it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. You are choosing yourself, you are reclaiming your power, and as Carl Jung reminds us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. In the end, the empath's quiet exit is the most brutal revenge, not because it seeks to hurt, but because it forces others to finally see themselves, to confront the shadows they've long ignored. Part 2. The hidden pain beneath the surface. We all know what it feels like to carry a weight that no one else sees. The expectations, the judgments, the silent demands that slowly drain our energy, our spirit, and our sense of self. For the empath, this weight is not only heavy, but it is invisible to the outside world. The empath is often the person who gives, who listens, who supports, without ever asking for anything in return. But beneath this quiet strength lies a deep, unspoken pain, one that the world rarely acknowledges. This pain is the burden of being constantly needed, of being the emotional anchor for others, without the space to replenish one's own soul. The empath's journey is not an easy one. On the outside, they may appear composed, calm, and capable of handling everything life throws their way. They are the ones who always know what to say when someone is hurting, the ones who instinctively offer comfort, even at the cost of their own well-being. But this constant act of giving without receiving is like an emotional drought, leaving the empath with nothing but emptiness inside. The pain they carry is often internalized, because they have been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to their ability to care for others. They are praised for their sensitivity, their kindness, and their ability to take on the burdens of others, but no one ever asks how much it costs them. In many ways, the empath's life can feel like an emotional paradox. They are constantly giving and yet feel more and more disconnected from themselves. They serve others, but who is serving them? They listen, but who is listening to them? This constant cycle of emotional labor with no time for self-care or reflection slowly chips away at their sense of identity. The more they give, the more they lose themselves in the process. They become a mirror for other people's emotions, constantly reflecting the feelings of those around them, but never truly seeing themselves. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow provides a powerful lens through which to understand this inner struggle. The shadow, as Jung described, is the part of the psyche that contains the unconscious elements of the self. Those aspects that we deny, repress, or fail to acknowledge. For the empath, the shadow is often a reflection of their own unprocessed emotions, their unmet needs, and their repressed desires. These aspects of themselves are hidden away because the empath is too focused on others to even recognize them. They have become so accustomed to being there for everyone else that they have neglected their own emotional landscape. This is where the danger lies. The empath may be so attuned to the emotional needs of others that they forget to honor their own. They may feel as though their own feelings and desires are insignificant, that they are only valuable as long as they are serving others. Over time, this dynamic leads to emotional burnout, where the empath feels drained, unappreciated, and disconnected from their own sense of self. They may even begin to feel like they are living someone else's life, as though they have lost touch with their own inner voice. Jung also spoke about the process of individuation, which is the journey of becoming the person you were always meant to be. It involves integrating the different parts of the self, including the shadow, and aligning with one's true nature. For the empath, this process is often blocked by the unconscious role they play in others' lives. They are so focused on helping and fixing others that they fail to do the necessary inner work of self-discovery. They need to begin the painful process of reclaiming their own identity and setting boundaries, not as an act of rejection, but as a necessary step toward healing. The quiet exit is the first step toward this process of individuation. It is a conscious decision to withdraw from unhealthy dynamics, to stop being the emotional container for others, and to start focusing on one's own needs. This withdrawal isn't a punishment, it's a form of self-preservation. It's the empath choosing to stop absorbing the emotional baggage of others and instead taking back their own energy and power. The empath realizes that they cannot continue to give without replenishing themselves first. It is in this quiet exit that they begin to find their true voice, the voice that has been drowned out by the needs of others for so long. The pain of this decision is not easily understood by others. Those who have relied on the empath for emotional support may feel abandoned, confused, or even angry. But what they fail to see is that the empath's silence is not an attack, nor is it an attempt to punish them. It is an invitation. It is a call for them to confront their own emotional patterns, to stop depending on the empath for emotional regulation, and to learn to process their own feelings. In other words, the empath's quiet exit forces others to face their own unconscious dynamics. This is where the concept of projection becomes relevant. According to Jung, projection is when we attribute our own unconscious feelings or traits onto others. When the empath withdraws, others may project their anger, frustration, or guilt onto them, accusing them of being selfish or cold. But what they are really doing is projecting their own inability to cope with their emotions onto the empath. The empath's withdrawal creates a space for the other person to confront their own emotional immaturity, their own dependency, and their own unresolved issues. The impact of the empath's quiet exit is profound. It is a powerful form of psychological revelation. It forces others to confront the fact that their relationship with the empath was based on an unconscious dynamic of dependence. They must now face the truth that they relied on the empath not for mutual emotional exchange, but for emotional support that they were too afraid to provide for themselves. The empath's absence creates a vacuum, a space in which the other person must either grow or collapse under the weight of their own emotional immaturity. In this process, the empath experiences a painful but necessary transformation. As they step away from the emotional labor they have been performing for others, they begin to rediscover their own sense of self. They reconnect with their own needs, desires, and feelings. They start to ask themselves the questions they've been too afraid to ask. What do I want? What do I need? Who am I when I'm not taking care of everyone else? The quiet exit is the first step in reclaiming their own identity and their own power. This transformation is not easy. It requires the empath to confront their own shadow, to face the parts of themselves they have denied or repressed. It is a painful process of self-awareness, of coming to terms with the fact that they have allowed themselves to be taken for granted. But it is also the beginning of their journey toward true emotional sovereignty. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The empath's quiet exit is the first step in this lifelong journey of individuation. So as the empath steps away from the toxic patterns that have defined their relationships, they begin to heal. They may not yet understand the full depth of their transformation, but they are on the path to reclaiming their authenticity. The quiet exit is not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one in which they are no longer defined by the needs of others but by the strength of their own soul. The journey of the empath is a journey of self-discovery, of healing, and of reclaiming one's power. It is a journey that requires great courage, especially when it involves letting go of the role they've played for so long. But in the end, the empath learns that true healing comes from within. They are no longer a vessel for the emotional baggage of others. They are a sovereign being, fully aware of their own worth and their own power. Part 3. The darkest shadows we carry. In the quiet moments of reflection, the empath may begin to confront the truth they've long avoided, the truth about themselves, the truth about the patterns they have unconsciously followed, the roles they've unknowingly played, and the aspects of themselves they have hidden away in the deepest corners of their being. These hidden parts are their shadows, and they are often the source of the very pain the empath feels in their relationships. Yet to truly heal and step into the light of their authentic self, the empath must face these shadows, not with judgment or fear, but with acceptance and understanding. The first step in confronting the shadow is recognizing its presence. For the empath, this can be an incredibly challenging process. They have spent so much of their life focusing on the needs of others that they have neglected their own. Their shadow is not just the painful emotions they carry, but also the unconscious patterns of behavior that have kept them trapped in cycles of emotional overextension. It may be the fear of abandonment that leads them to stay in unhealthy relationships, or the belief that they are only worthy if they are constantly giving. These patterns are not easy to confront, especially when they have been the foundation of how the empath has navigated the world for so long. But Carl Jung, in his exploration of the human psyche, understood that the only way to achieve true individuation, the process of becoming whole, is to bring the shadow into the light. As he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The empath's shadow is not something to be feared or rejected. It is simply the parts of themselves they have not yet embraced. It holds within it the key to their deepest healing. The process of shadow integration is a gradual one. It requires the empath to look at the parts of themselves they have ignored, the parts that they may have believed were unworthy or unlovable. The fear of being judged, of being seen as selfish or cold, often prevents the empath from confronting these parts. They are terrified that if they acknowledge their own needs, their own desires, they will lose the love and approval of those around them. But this fear is rooted in the belief that they must be everything to everyone, and that their worth is tied to their ability to give endlessly. The empath must learn that their value is not based on what they give to others, but on who they are in their entirety, including the parts of themselves that are often hidden in the shadows. This is where the quiet exit becomes so powerful. It is not just an act of withdrawing from others, it is an act of withdrawing from the patterns that have defined the empath's identity for so long. The empath is no longer playing the role of the emotional caretaker, the listener, the fixer. Instead, they are stepping back to reclaim their own sense of self. They are no longer sacrificing their well-being for the sake of others. In doing so, they are forced to confront their shadow, those parts of themselves that have been submerged for too long. For the empath, the shadow may take many forms. It could be the belief that they are not deserving of love unless they are constantly giving. It could be the fear that if they stop taking care of others, they will be abandoned. Or it could be the unresolved pain of their own past, the emotions they have never allowed themselves to feel because they have been too busy focusing on the pain of others. These are the aspects of the self that the empath must come to terms with. They must recognize that their pain, their fears, and their desires are valid and worthy of attention. Jung believed that the shadow was an essential part of the individuation process. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This means embracing all aspects of the self, the light and the dark. For the empath, this means accepting the parts of themselves they have long hidden. It means acknowledging their own needs, their own boundaries, and their own desires. Only by doing this can the empath begin to break free from the patterns of emotional overextension that have kept them stuck in toxic relationships and unhealthy dynamics. As the empath faces their shadow, they may begin to feel a sense of liberation. They may realize that they are not defined by their ability to take on the emotions of others, but by their own sense of self-worth. They may begin to understand that they are not responsible for the happiness of others, and that they do not need to sacrifice their own well-being to prove their worth. This realization is incredibly empowering, but it can also be terrifying. The empath may feel guilt or shame for having neglected their own needs for so long. They may fear that by setting boundaries they will push people away. But this fear is rooted in the old belief that their value comes from their ability to give endlessly. The truth is, the empath's value is inherent. They do not need to prove their worth by giving everything away. In the process of shadow integration, the empath learns to reclaim their power. They begin to set boundaries that honor their own needs, and they stop accepting less than they deserve. They start to recognize that their sensitivity is a gift, not a curse. It is a gift that allows them to connect deeply with others, but it is also a gift that requires protection. The empath must learn that they can only give from a place of abundance, not depletion. They must learn to protect their energy, to honor their own needs, and to embrace their own feelings without guilt or shame. Jung's concept of the shadow teaches us that we cannot truly heal until we confront the parts of ourselves that we have hidden away. The empath's shadow is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. It is the part of themselves that holds the key to their true power. When the empath learns to accept their shadow, they begin to unlock the fullness of their potential. They no longer live in fear of being rejected or abandoned for their perceived flaws. They embrace their whole self, knowing that they are worthy of love and respect, not because of what they give, but because of who they are. The quiet exit is a powerful form of shadow integration. By stepping away from the emotional labor they have been performing for others, the empath is forced to confront the truth of who they are. They begin to see that their worth is not tied to their role as a caretaker, but to their true, authentic self. In this process, they reclaim their power and step into the light of their own soul. The shadow is not something to be feared. It is simply a part of us that has yet to be acknowledged and integrated. For the empath, facing the shadow is the first step toward healing. It is the key to breaking free from the patterns that have kept them trapped in cycles of emotional overextension. By embracing their shadow, the empath can finally step into the fullness of their own power and become the person they were always meant to be. Part 4. The power of boundaries in the empath's journey. The process of transformation for the empath is not one of sudden epiphanies or dramatic shifts. It is a slow and steady evolution. It is a journey that takes time, patience, and courage as the empath learns to reclaim their personal power. One of the most crucial elements of this journey is the establishment of boundaries. For the empath, setting boundaries is not just an act of self-care, it is an act of self-preservation. The concept of boundaries, however, is not something that comes naturally to many empaths. They have spent so much of their lives giving to others that the very idea of saying no or stepping back can feel unnatural, even selfish. But boundaries are not only necessary for their survival, they are essential for their emotional well-being. At the core of the empath's experience is the constant flow of energy between themselves and others. Empaths are highly sensitive to the emotions of the people around them, absorbing these emotions as if they are their own. This makes them incredibly compassionate and understanding, but it also leaves them vulnerable to emotional exhaustion and burnout. The empath's ability to connect deeply with others is both a gift and a burden. It allows them to form meaningful relationships and offer deep empathy, but it also exposes them to the emotional turmoil of others. The empath's sensitivity can sometimes become overwhelming, especially when they feel responsible for the emotional states of those around them. This is where boundaries become vital. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect the empath from becoming emotionally consumed by the needs of others. They create a space in which the empath can maintain their own sense of self, without being overwhelmed by the emotions of those around them. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. Rather, they are protective barriers that allow the empath to engage with others in a healthy and balanced way. When the empath learns to set boundaries, they are not rejecting others. They are simply preserving their own emotional energy so that they can continue to give without depleting themselves. For many empaths, the idea of setting boundaries is fraught with guilt. They may feel that if they say no or step back, they are being selfish or unkind. They may fear that others will view them as cold, distant, or unloving. But this guilt is often rooted in old patterns of behavior. The belief that their worth is tied to how much they can give and how available they are to others. The empath must learn to challenge this belief. They must come to understand that their worth is not based on their ability to serve others, but on their intrinsic value as human beings. The act of setting boundaries is not about rejecting others. It is about recognizing that they deserve to have their own needs met and that they are worthy of respect. Jung's concept of individuation plays a crucial role in this process. Individuation is the process of becoming the person you were always meant to be. By integrating all aspects of the self, both the conscious and unconscious. For the empath, Individuation requires the recognition and acceptance of their own needs, desires, and emotions. It requires the empath to acknowledge that they are not merely an emotional caretaker for others. They are individuals with their own lives, their own feelings, and their own purpose. In order to step into their true power, the empath must learn to set boundaries that honor their individuality. The journey of individuation often involves a painful confrontation with the shadow. For the empath, the shadow represents the aspects of themselves they have repressed or denied, usually their own needs and desires. These parts of themselves are often hidden behind the role they have played in others' lives. The shadow can manifest as feelings of guilt, fear, or resentment when the empath begins to set boundaries. The empath may feel as though they are being selfish or unloving for taking care of their own needs. But this guilt is a reflection of the old belief system that says they must always give without expecting anything in return. When the empath begins to set boundaries, they are forced to confront the shadow and ask themselves, "What do I need? What do I want? Who am I when I am not serving others?" As the empath begins to set boundaries, they may initially face resistance from those around them. People who have relied on the empath for emotional support may feel hurt or confused by the sudden change. They may try to manipulate the empath back into their old role, using guilt or emotional pressure to break through the boundaries. This is a common reaction in relationships where one person has been overgiving and the other has been taking without reciprocating. But this resistance is not a reason for the empath to abandon their boundaries. In fact, it is a sign that they are beginning to reclaim their own power. When the empath sets a boundary, they are sending a message not only to others but to themselves that they are worthy of respect and that their needs are just as important as anyone else's. Jung's insights into projection are also critical here. Projection occurs when one person attributes their own unconscious feelings or traits to another. In the context of the empath, projection often happens when others cannot accept the empath's boundaries and project their own unmet needs or unresolved emotions onto the empath. The empath may feel guilt or shame for setting boundaries, but this is a projection of others' emotional needs, not a reflection of the empath's own truth. The empath must learn to recognize these projections for what they are and not internalize them. Setting boundaries is not about punishing others. It is about taking care of oneself, and in doing so, teaching others how to respect and care for themselves as well. The act of setting boundaries is not an easy one, but it is necessary for the empath to preserve their emotional well-being. It is an act of self-love and self-respect. Boundaries allow the empath to engage with others in a way that is sustainable and healthy. They can still offer empathy, love, and support to those around them, but they no longer sacrifice their own sense of self in the process. By setting boundaries, the empath is not only protecting their own energy, but also creating the space for deeper, more authentic connections. They are teaching others how to respect their needs, and in doing so, they are fostering relationships based on mutual care and respect. As the empath continues on their journey, they will encounter moments of doubt and fear. They may question whether they are doing the right thing or whether they are being too selfish. But it is in these moments of uncertainty that the empath must return to the wisdom of Carl Jung, who reminds us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The journey of individuation requires the empath to step into their own truth, to honor their own needs, and to trust that their boundaries are not only necessary but vital for their personal growth and well-being. The power of boundaries is transformative. It is the key to the empath's emotional sovereignty. As they learn to set and uphold boundaries, they are reclaiming their personal power and stepping into their authentic self. They are no longer defined by the emotional needs of others. They are defined by their own truth. This transformation is not easy, but it is essential for the empath's journey toward healing and self-discovery. Through the process of setting boundaries, the empath learns that they are not here to carry the emotional burdens of others. They are here to live their own truth, to honor their own needs, and to share their gifts with the world in a way that is sustainable and fulfilling. By protecting their own energy and setting healthy boundaries, the empath becomes a more powerful force for healing in the world, not by giving everything away, but by giving from a place of abundance and self-awareness. Part 5. Embracing authenticity and the courage to be displeasing. The journey of the empath is one of deep transformation, but it is not one without its challenges. As they step into their power, set boundaries, and begin to confront the shadows within, the empath finds themselves at a crossroads. There comes a point in the empath's journey when they must confront one of the most difficult truths: the truth about authenticity. In this stage of their growth, the empath is forced to ask themselves a question that many would rather avoid. Who am I truly when I am no longer defined by the needs of others? This is where the concept of authenticity becomes crucial. Authenticity is the ability to live in alignment with one's true self, to express the deepest parts of who we are without fear of judgment or rejection. It is not about fitting into a mold that society, family, or even our closest friends have created for us. It is about stepping into the fullness of who we are, unapologetically and with courage. For the empath, this can be incredibly difficult. For so long, they have lived for others, defined by their role as the caregiver, the listener, the emotional support system. But now, they are being called to redefine themselves, to shed the roles and labels that have kept them small and begin to embrace the vastness of their own truth. Carl Jung understood that authenticity is at the heart of the individuation process, the process by which we become who we are meant to be. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this process of becoming requires courage. The courage to face the parts of ourselves that we have hidden away. The courage to stand in our truth even when it is uncomfortable or when others may not understand. And for the empath, the courage to be authentic often involves the willingness to be displeasing to others. For the empath, the fear of displeasing others is deeply ingrained. They have spent so much of their lives trying to make everyone happy, trying to be everything to everyone, that the idea of saying no or disappointing someone feels unbearable. They fear that if they stop giving, if they stop meeting the needs of others, they will be unloved or rejected. But this fear is rooted in a belief that is not aligned with their true self. It is rooted in the idea that their worth is dependent on their ability to serve others, to give endlessly, and to always be available. The truth is, the empath's worth does not come from what they give. It comes from who they are, fully and authentically. The courage to be displeasing is one of the most transformative aspects of the empath's journey. It is the moment when they choose themselves, when they recognize that their needs are just as important as the needs of others. It is the moment when they stop performing for the approval of others and start living in alignment with their own truth. In this moment, the empath learns that they do not need to be everyone's emotional caretaker in order to be loved. They do not need to sacrifice their own needs for the sake of others. They can be authentic, they can be true to themselves, and they can still experience deep, meaningful connections with others. For the empath, this shift is not always easy. It requires the willingness to let go of old patterns and beliefs that have defined their relationships. It requires the courage to disappoint others, to stop over-functioning, and to begin putting their own needs first. The empath may face resistance not only from others but from their own inner fears. They may feel guilty for saying no or for taking time for themselves. They may fear that by prioritizing their own needs, they are being selfish or unloving. But in truth, this is the most loving thing they can do for themselves and for others. By setting boundaries and living authentically, the empath teaches others the importance of self-respect and self-care. This is where the shadow of the empath often comes into play. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we have repressed or denied, and for the empath, This can include their own desires, needs, and sense of self-worth. The shadow can manifest as guilt or shame when the empath begins to set boundaries or say no. It can also show up as a fear of abandonment or rejection. These fears are often tied to the belief that their value comes from being constantly available and emotionally supportive. But in order to step into their authenticity, the empath must confront these shadows. They must acknowledge that they are worthy of love and respect, not because of what they give, but because of who they are. Carl Jung spoke often about the need for integration of the shadow in order to achieve wholeness. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The empath's journey toward authenticity requires them to integrate the parts of themselves they have hidden away, those parts that are not always pleasing, those parts that do not conform to the expectations of others. It requires them to accept the parts of themselves that they have rejected, to embrace their own power, and to stand in their truth even when it is uncomfortable. The more the empath embraces their shadow, the more they step into their authentic self. The courage to be displeasing also means the courage to let go of relationships that no longer serve them. This is perhaps one of the most difficult aspects of the empath's journey. The empath has spent so much of their life taking care of others that the idea of walking away from a relationship, even a toxic one, feels unthinkable. But the empath must realize that not all relationships are meant to last, and not all relationships are healthy. The courage to be authentic means the courage to let go of the relationships that drain them, that keep them in a constant state of emotional depletion. It means choosing themselves over the demands of others, even if it means disappointing people along the way. In this process, the empath learns that true love does not require self-sacrifice. True love is about being seen for who we truly are, not for the roles we play or the things we do for others. The empath begins to understand that they do not need to prove their worth by giving everything away. They can love deeply and authentically, but they must first learn to love themselves. They must recognize that their emotional needs are just as important as anyone else's, and that by taking care of themselves, they are better able to show up for others in a way that is healthy and sustainable. The empath's journey toward authenticity is not without its struggles, but it is a journey worth taking. It is the journey of reclaiming their power, stepping into their truth, and embracing the fullness of who they are. By learning to be displeasing, by learning to say no when necessary, the empath becomes free. They are no longer bound by the expectations of others or by the need to be everything to everyone. They are free to live their own life on their own terms with the courage to be true to themselves. Part 6. The liberation of synchronicity and inner peace. As the empath continues their journey of self-discovery and transformation, something profound begins to shift within them. After years of giving, sacrificing, and losing themselves in the needs of others, they find themselves moving into a new phase, one that is not defined by duty or expectation, but by a deep sense of inner peace and alignment. This is the moment when synchronicity begins to take shape in their life. Synchronicity, a concept introduced by Carl Jung, refers to meaningful coincidences that occur in our lives, seemingly without cause or explanation. These events, however, carry a deeper, almost mystical significance that goes beyond simple chance. For the empath, synchronicity is the universe's way of affirming that they are on the right path, that they are aligning with their true self and the flow of the universe. The more the empath embraces their authenticity, the more they begin to experience these synchronistic moments. Things seem to fall into place effortlessly, doors open at the right time, and they are led to people, situations, and opportunities that feel destined. For many empaths, the feeling of being lost or out of sync with the world is a constant theme throughout their lives. They have often felt disconnected from their true purpose, unsure of their place in the world, and overwhelmed by the emotional demands placed upon them. But when they begin to embrace their authenticity, set boundaries, and confront their shadows, they open themselves up to a new level of clarity. It is in this clarity that synchronicity begins to manifest. The empath, who once felt as though they were merely reacting to life, begins to step into their own power. They are no longer responding to external forces, but rather aligning themselves with their internal truth. This internal alignment creates a powerful magnetic force that draws the right people, situations, and opportunities toward them. Synchronicity is not something that can be forced. It is something that flows naturally when the empath allows themselves to be true to who they are. When they stop trying to fit into a mold, when they let go of the need to please others, the universe begins to respond in kind. In this stage of their journey, the empath begins to experience a profound sense of peace. This peace is not simply the absence of conflict, but the presence of a deep inner stillness that comes from knowing that they are on the right path. They begin to trust the flow of life, knowing that everything is unfolding as it should. They stop feeling the need to control every aspect of their existence and instead surrender to the natural rhythm of the universe. The empath has learned that the key to peace is not in pleasing others, but in honoring their own truth and allowing life to unfold without resistance. This newfound peace is a direct result of the empath's spiritual awakening. As they continue to embrace their authenticity, they begin to connect more deeply with their soul, and in doing so, they begin to align with a higher purpose. They start to understand that their sensitivity is not a burden, but a gift, one that allows them to connect with others on a deeper level. They also begin to understand that they are not here to save the world, but to live in harmony with it. This realization brings about a shift in how the empath sees themselves and their place in the world. They are no longer defined by the emotional needs of others, but by their own sense of purpose and the peace that comes from living in alignment with their soul. The experience of synchronicity becomes a constant reminder that the empath is on the right path. These meaningful coincidences serve as subtle nudges from the universe, encouraging the empath to trust themselves and continue on their journey. They may find that when they let go of their need for control, opportunities and relationships begin to flow effortlessly into their lives. People who align with their energy and values appear at the perfect moment, and the empath feels supported by a greater force, as though the universe is working in tandem with their desires. However, this journey is not without its tests. There will be moments when the empath doubts their path, when they question if they are truly on the right track. The old patterns of overgiving, self-sacrifice, and people-pleasing may resurface, and the empath may feel pulled back into their old ways. But this is where the concept of inner peace becomes crucial. The empath must learn to trust their inner voice, the quiet, steady guidance that comes from within. It is this inner voice that will lead them back to their authentic self whenever they feel lost or overwhelmed. Jung's philosophy of individuation teaches that the path to self-realization is not always linear. There are times when we will take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but this is all part of the process. The empath must learn to be compassionate with themselves during these moments of uncertainty. They must trust that even when they stray from their path, they are still being guided toward their highest good. The empath's journey toward inner peace is also a journey toward spiritual maturity. As they continue to embrace their sensitivity and authenticity, they begin to see their role in the world with greater clarity. They understand that their sensitivity is a strength, not a weakness. They no longer see themselves as victims of their emotions, but as powerful beings who are capable of healing and transforming the energy around them. They realize that their emotional depth allows them to connect with others in ways that many others cannot. They no longer see their sensitivity as something to be ashamed of or hidden away, but as a gift that enables them to offer profound love and understanding. In this stage of their evolution, the empath begins to experience a deeper connection with the universe. They see the divine in all things, from the smallest flower to the vastness of the stars. This connection brings them a sense of belonging, as they realize that they are part of a greater whole. The empath begins to feel at peace with the world, knowing that they are exactly where they are meant to be. They stop questioning their purpose because they know that they are living it. As synchronicity continues to unfold in the empath's life, they begin to see that they are not alone in their journey. They begin to attract others who are on a similar path, people who are also awakening to their true selves, people who understand and appreciate the empath's gifts. The empath realizes that they are part of a greater collective of souls who are all working toward the same goal: to live authentically, in alignment with their true purpose, and to bring peace and healing to the world. This realization brings a deep sense of gratitude. The empath is grateful for the challenges they have faced, because it is through these challenges that they have found their strength. They are grateful for the moments of doubt, because it is through these moments that they have learned to trust themselves. And most importantly, they are grateful for the quiet peace that now rises within them. The peace that comes from knowing that they are on the right path, and that the universe is always guiding them home. Part 7. The strength of self-compassion and the healing power of vulnerability. As the empath continues their journey toward greater self-awareness and authenticity, they come to realize that a key component of their healing is the cultivation of self-compassion. For so long, the empath has given tirelessly to others, often neglecting their own needs, emotions, and well-being in the process. The idea of self-compassion may initially feel foreign, even uncomfortable. For the empath, it is often easier to show kindness and understanding to others than to offer the same to themselves. But self-compassion is not a luxury, it is a necessity for healing and growth. Carl Jung, in his work on individuation, spoke often of the importance of embracing all parts of the self, including those that we find difficult or uncomfortable. Self-compassion is an act of embracing oneself fully, without judgment or self-criticism. It is the recognition that as human beings, we are all imperfect, we all struggle, and we all deserve love and kindness, especially from ourselves. The empath, who has spent so much of their life tending to the emotional needs of others, must learn to turn that same compassion inward. This is the first step toward true healing. The healing power of vulnerability is another crucial aspect of the empath's journey. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, especially in a world that values strength, independence, and self-reliance. But for the empath, vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a powerful source of connection, growth, and transformation. Vulnerability allows the empath to step into their truth, to show the world who they really are, without the masks or roles they have worn for so long. It is through vulnerability that the empath can experience deep emotional healing and create authentic, meaningful connections with others. To understand the healing power of vulnerability, we must first recognize the emotional armor that many empaths carry. Over the years, the empath has learned to shield themselves from the emotional intensity of the world around them. They have developed coping mechanisms to protect their sensitive hearts, often by withdrawing, overgiving, or suppressing their own emotions. While these defenses may have served them in the past, they are no longer sustainable. True healing requires the empath to lower their defenses, to let go of the need for protection, and to open themselves up to the world once again. This is where self-compassion becomes essential. Vulnerability cannot exist without compassion. The empath must first create a safe space within themselves, a space where they can feel their emotions fully without fear of judgment or rejection. This is the power of self-acceptance. The empath must learn to accept their feelings, their weaknesses, and their imperfections. They must come to understand that they are worthy of love and compassion. Not because they are perfect, but because they are human. It is through this self-acceptance that the empath can begin to heal the wounds they have carried for so long. Jung's teachings on the integration of the shadow also play a significant role in this process. The shadow represents those parts of ourselves that we have repressed, denied, or rejected, often because they are too painful to face. For the empath, the shadow may include feelings of anger, frustration, or resentment, emotions they have long suppressed in order to maintain harmony and avoid conflict. Vulnerability requires the empath to face these repressed emotions, to allow them to surface, and to acknowledge them with compassion. The empath must learn that these emotions are not bad or wrong. They are simply part of the human experience. Only by embracing these emotions can the empath truly heal. The journey towards self-compassion and vulnerability is not a linear one. There will be moments of doubt, fear, and resistance. The empath may feel guilty for taking time for themselves, or they may fear that their vulnerability will lead to rejection or hurt. But the empath must remember that vulnerability is not about being exposed or weak. It is about being authentic, about allowing themselves to be seen for who they truly are. It is through this authenticity that the empath can experience the deepest healing. Vulnerability also has the power to deepen the empath's connections with others. For so long, the empath may have felt disconnected from others, isolated in their own emotional world. They may have built walls around their hearts, afraid to let others in, afraid of being hurt or misunderstood. But vulnerability creates the space for true connection. When the empath allows themselves to be vulnerable, they invite others to do the same. They create an environment in which authenticity and trust can flourish. Vulnerability is the bridge that connects the empath to the world, to others, and to their own deeper truth. As the empath continues to embrace vulnerability, they begin to see that they are not alone. They begin to realize that everyone carries their own pain, their own struggles, and their own vulnerabilities. In this way, vulnerability is not a source of shame. It is a source of strength. It is the recognition that we are all in this together, that we all have our own wounds, and that by sharing our vulnerability, we can heal together. One of the most profound gifts that vulnerability offers is the ability to forgive, both others and oneself. The empath may have carried resentment or bitterness for the ways they have been treated in the past, especially by those who took advantage of their kindness and sensitivity. But vulnerability allows the empath to release these grudges and to forgive. Forgiveness is not about excusing the behavior of others. It is about releasing the emotional grip that past hurts have on them. It is about setting themselves free from the chains of resentment and moving forward with peace in their heart. Forgiveness, like vulnerability, is a form of self-compassion. It is an act of love, not just toward others, but toward themselves. The healing power of vulnerability also opens the door to self-empowerment. As the empath becomes more comfortable with their own vulnerability, they begin to reclaim their inner strength. Vulnerability is not about weakness, it is about courage. It takes great strength to be vulnerable, to allow ourselves to be seen and to show up authentically in the world. The empath begins to realize that their vulnerability is a source of power, not a liability. They no longer need to hide behind walls or play a role in order to feel safe. They can stand in their truth, knowing that they are worthy of love, respect, and acceptance, just as they are. Through self-compassion and vulnerability, the empath not only heals themselves, but they also heal the world around them. When the empath embraces their own vulnerability, they create a ripple effect, encouraging others to do the same. They become a beacon of light, showing others that it is safe to be authentic, to be real, and to embrace their own wounds and imperfections. The empath's vulnerability becomes a catalyst for collective healing, reminding others that we are all interconnected, and that it is through our shared vulnerability that we can find true strength. The journey towards self-compassion and vulnerability is one of the most powerful aspects of the empath's transformation. It is through these qualities that the empath can experience the deepest healing. the most profound connections, and the truest sense of peace. When the empath learns to embrace their vulnerability with compassion, they unlock a new level of personal and spiritual growth. They come to understand that they are not weak for being vulnerable, but strong for allowing themselves to be seen. They become whole, fully integrated beings who are capable of loving deeply, living authentically, and healing the world through their presence. Part 8. Reflecting on the power of authenticity and the path forward. As the empath journeys deeper into their path of self-awareness and transformation, they begin to realize that the true power lies not in perfection, but in the courage to embrace their authentic self. For years, the empath has tried to conform to the needs, expectations, and desires of others. They have worn countless masks to fit in, to be loved, and to be accepted. They have suppressed their own truth in favor of helping others, trying to be the person that the world demands them to be. But now, in the midst of their transformation, they realize that the key to lasting peace, happiness, and fulfillment is the courage to let go of these masks and stand in their full authenticity. This is the point where the empath's journey shifts. It is the moment when they fully embrace the idea that they are worthy of love, respect, and acceptance simply because they exist, because they are themselves. The journey of becoming authentic is not a smooth one. It is a path filled with challenges, doubts, and fears. However, it is also a path filled with immense power and liberation. The more the empath steps into their authenticity, the more they reclaim their true strength and connect with the depth of their own soul. The process of self-discovery and self-acceptance is at the heart of this journey. The empath begins to see that they are not broken or flawed for being sensitive, for feeling deeply, or for caring so much. Their sensitivity is a gift, a unique ability to understand others and connect with them on a deep emotional level. The empath no longer needs to hide their sensitivity or suppress their emotions. They begin to realize that their sensitivity is not something that makes them weak. It is what makes them powerful. It is through their sensitivity that they can experience the world in its fullest, richest form, and through this they are able to bring healing, understanding, and love to those around them. In embracing their authentic self, the empath must also come to terms with the parts of themselves they have long ignored or rejected, their shadow. Jung often spoke about the need to integrate the shadow in order to achieve wholeness. The shadow is not a separate part of ourselves. It is the hidden, repressed aspects of our personality that we have denied or suppressed. These are the emotions, traits, and behaviors that we have deemed unacceptable or unworthy. For the empath, the shadow can often be found in the hidden anger, frustration, and resentment that has been buried beneath their desire to always help, to always be the good person. It can also be found in the unconscious patterns of overgiving, over-sacrificing, and self-neglect. When the empath learns to integrate their shadow, they come to understand that these parts of themselves are not something to be ashamed of. They are simply aspects of their humanity. Emotions and traits that have been suppressed because they didn't fit the image the empath had of themselves. The empath's shadow holds valuable lessons. It reveals the deeper truths about who they really are, and by accepting these truths, the empath begins to heal and become whole. The act of embracing the shadow is not about becoming something else. It is about fully accepting who they are in their entirety, with all their imperfections, flaws, and strengths. Self-compassion is a critical aspect of this acceptance. The empath must learn to be kind to themselves, to recognize that they deserve the same love and care that they so freely give to others. For many empaths, this is a foreign concept. They have been so conditioned to focus on the needs of others that they have forgotten how to care for themselves. But as they embrace their authenticity, they realize that the journey is not about pleasing others or meeting their expectations. It is about living in alignment with their own truth and honoring their own needs. By practicing self-compassion, the empath learns to nurture themselves as they would nurture someone they love deeply. This act of self-love is the key to true emotional healing. At the same time, the empath learns the importance of boundaries. As they become more authentic, they recognize that healthy boundaries are necessary for their well-being. Boundaries allow the empath to protect their energy and prevent emotional depletion. The empath realizes that it is not selfish to say no when they are overwhelmed or to set limits on the emotional demands of others. In fact, by setting boundaries, they are able to preserve their energy, their peace, and their sense of self. Healthy boundaries are a way of respecting oneself and ensuring that the empath's emotional resources are not drained by the needs of others. By practicing healthy boundaries, the empath can offer love and support to others from a place of abundance, not depletion. As the empath moves forward on their path, they begin to see that their authenticity is not only for their own healing, but also for the healing of others. When the empath embraces their true self, they inspire others to do the same. Their journey of self-acceptance and vulnerability becomes a beacon of light, showing others that it is safe to be real, to be vulnerable, and to be authentic. The empath's ability to be true to themselves creates a ripple effect, encouraging those around them to step into their own authenticity and embrace their own truths. In this way, the empath's journey is not just about their own healing, it is about the collective healing of those around them. The empath begins to attract the right people into their life. People who are aligned with their values, who respect their boundaries, and who honor their authenticity. The relationships that the empath cultivates at this stage are based on mutual respect, love, and understanding. These relationships are no longer based on emotional dependence or the need to fix others. Instead, they are based on deep connection, where both parties can be themselves without fear of judgment. The empath realizes that they no longer need to seek external validation or approval. They have found their validation within themselves, and it is from this place of inner strength that they create healthy, authentic relationships. Jung's teachings on individuation are central to the empath's path. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, of integrating all parts of oneself and living in alignment with one's true nature. For the empath, individuation means stepping into their authenticity, embracing their sensitivity as a gift, and living in a way that is true to their soul. It is the process of shedding the false self, the masks and the roles that have been created to please others, and stepping into the full expression of who they are. The more the empath embraces this process of individuation, the more they come to understand that they are not here to be anyone else's emotional caretaker. They are here to live their truth, to love themselves, and to share their unique gifts with the world. At the heart of this journey is the realization that the empath's authenticity is their greatest strength. Their ability to feel deeply, to connect with others on a profound emotional level, is not a weakness. It is what allows them to heal, to inspire, and to create change. The empath's sensitivity is a gift that, when fully embraced, becomes a powerful force for good in the world. Through their journey of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and authenticity, the empath learns that they are worthy of love and happiness, not because of what they do for others, but because of who they are. As the empath steps into their true self, they experience a profound sense of freedom and peace. They no longer need to hide behind masks or play roles. They are free to be themselves, to live authentically, and to offer their love and compassion from a place of strength. And in doing so, they create a life filled with purpose, connection, and true joy. Part 9. Expanding the community of awakening souls. As the empath continues to embrace their authenticity, set boundaries, and integrate their shadows, something profound begins to happen. They no longer exist in isolation, confined to the lonely path of self-discovery. Instead, they begin to expand their consciousness and attract others who are on a similar journey of awakening. The empath's transformation becomes a catalyst for the expansion of a community, an interconnected web of souls that are all working toward the same goal: self-realization, healing, and a deeper connection with the universe. This is the power of community, and it plays a critical role in the empath's journey toward wholeness. One of the most transformative aspects of this process is the realization that we are not alone. For so long, the empath may have felt like an outsider, disconnected from others and unsure of their place in the world. They may have struggled with feelings of loneliness, believing that their sensitivity and depth were isolating qualities. But as they evolve and become more aligned with their authentic self, they begin to realize that their sensitivity is not a curse. It is a bridge to a deeper connection with others. The empath's newfound authenticity and inner peace create a magnetic energy that draws people toward them. The more they embrace their true selves, the more they attract individuals who are also on a path of spiritual growth and self-discovery. These people are drawn to the empath's energy, recognizing the healing potential within the empath's presence. The empath begins to see that they are not an island, but an integral part of a much larger community of awakening souls. Carl Jung spoke of collective consciousness, the idea that we are all connected by a shared, unconscious mind. In his view, we are not isolated individuals, but rather interconnected beings who share common experiences, emotions, and aspirations. As the empath steps into their authenticity, they begin to tap into this collective consciousness, realizing that they are not alone on their journey. They are part of a vast network of individuals who are all seeking to understand themselves, heal their wounds, and connect with a higher sense of purpose. The expansion of community is not just about connecting with others in a superficial or transactional way. It is about creating deep, meaningful relationships that are based on shared values, mutual respect, and authentic connection. The empath's role in this community is not to be the fixer or the emotional caretaker, but to be a source of inspiration and healing through their own journey of self-realization. As the empath becomes more whole, they naturally begin to radiate healing energy that supports others in their own growth. In this new phase of their journey, the empath learns that they do not have to carry the emotional burdens of others in order to be loved or appreciated. The relationships they form are based on mutual respect and emotional autonomy. The empath no longer feels the need to be everything to everyone. Instead, they learn to cultivate relationships that nourish their soul and contribute to their growth, rather than depleting them. The empath's authenticity becomes the foundation for creating authentic community. These are not relationships based on emotional dependence or transactional dynamics. Instead, they are grounded in love, understanding, and mutual support. The empath begins to realize that their greatest gift is not in how much they give to others, but in how much they allow themselves to receive from the universe and from others in return. As the empath connects with others who are also on a path of self-discovery, they begin to witness the beauty of collective awakening. They see that everyone has their own unique journey, but there is a shared purpose that unites them all. This shared purpose is the pursuit of authenticity, self-awareness, and spiritual growth. In the presence of like-minded souls, the empath experiences a profound sense of belonging, a recognition that they are part of something much greater than themselves. Jung's concept of individuation is deeply intertwined with the idea of community. Individuation is the process of becoming the person you are meant to be, by integrating all parts of yourself, both light and shadow. But individuation is not a solitary process. It is a process that requires the support of others, as we all serve as mirrors to one another. Through our interactions with others, we learn more about ourselves and discover new aspects of our own nature. In this way, community becomes an essential part of the individuation process. The empath's role in the community is not to fix or heal others, but to be a beacon of light, someone who has walked the path of self-discovery and can offer guidance, love, and understanding to those who are just beginning their own journey. The empath's presence in the community is a reflection of their own growth, and through their example, others are inspired to step into their own truth. The more the empath lives authentically, the more they inspire others to do the same. This creates a ripple effect, an ever-expanding community of souls who are all awakening to their true selves. The empath begins to see that their journey is not just about their own healing. It is about the collective healing of humanity. As they connect with others who are also awakening, they realize that they are part of a larger movement, a movement toward greater self-awareness, love, and spiritual enlightenment. The empath no longer feels isolated or disconnected from the world. Instead, they feel deeply connected to the collective consciousness and the shared aspirations of all awakening souls. At the same time, the empath must also learn to protect their energy within this expanding community. While the empath's sensitivity allows them to connect deeply with others, it also makes them vulnerable to emotional overwhelm. The empath must learn to navigate their relationships with care, ensuring that they maintain their emotional well-being while engaging with others. This requires the ability to set clear boundaries, to recognize when they need to step back, and to honor their own needs for rest and rejuvenation. As the empath continues to grow and expand within their community, they begin to see that their personal growth is intertwined with the growth of others. The more the empath steps into their authentic self, the more they inspire others to do the same. The empath's journey is no longer just about their own healing, it is about healing the collective, and in doing so, contributing to the awakening of the entire world. In the end, the empath realizes that their path is one of deep connection, not isolation. They are not alone on this journey, but part of a vast network of souls who are all seeking truth, healing, and enlightenment. As they expand their community of like-minded individuals, they discover that the journey of self-realization is not just about the individual. It is about the collective. Together, we are all awakening to our true selves, and in doing so, we are creating a world filled with authenticity, love, and unity. Part 10. The final step, embracing the journey and moving forward. As the empath reaches the final step of their transformative journey, they come to a powerful realization. The path to self-discovery, authenticity, and inner peace is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey. The empath has spent so much of their life searching for answers, seeking validation, and trying to fit into the expectations of others. They have navigated through loneliness, doubt, and self-sacrifice, all in the name of healing others and finding their place in the world. But now, at this pivotal moment, they understand that the real gift of the journey lies not in the end, but in the process itself. The journey has been about more than just learning to set boundaries, to embrace vulnerability, or to integrate their shadows. It has been about returning to themselves, the essence of who they truly are, beyond all the roles they have played and the expectations they have carried. This final realization brings a sense of peace, a deep inner knowing that they have walked the path they were always meant to walk. It is a sense of wholeness, a completion of the self, yet it marks only the beginning of a new phase. For the empath, the challenge has always been to find balance. Balance between caring for others and caring for themselves, between offering love and receiving it, between being sensitive to the needs of the world and staying grounded in their own truth. Through each step of their journey, they have learned to navigate these delicate balances. They have learned to recognize when they are overextending themselves, when they are giving too much without replenishing their own energy, and when they are allowing the needs of others to overshadow their own. Through this, the empath has gained a deep wisdom about what it means to truly care for others and for themselves. At the core of this transformation is the recognition that true healing comes from within. The empath no longer seeks external validation or approval to feel worthy. They have learned that their worth is inherent, not based on what they give, but on who they are. The empath is now able to hold space for their own emotions, to sit with their pain and their joy without judgment. They are no longer defined by the roles they have played or the expectations they have tried to fulfill. Instead, they are defined by their capacity to embrace their own truth, to honor their own needs, and to live authentically in a world that often demands conformity. In embracing their authenticity, the empath also understands that they have the power to shape their own reality. They have been given the tools to create a life that reflects their true desires, to manifest the relationships, opportunities, and experiences that align with their soul's purpose. The empath realizes that they are not at the mercy of external circumstances or the opinions of others. They are the creators of their own world, and it is through their inner alignment that they can create a life filled with purpose, peace, and joy. This realization brings a sense of liberation. The empath no longer feels trapped by the expectations of others or by the weight of the past. They are free to live in a way that feels true to them, to pursue their passions and to embrace the unknown with courage and trust. They understand that they do not need to have all the answers and that the journey itself is the reward. Each moment of life, whether joyful or challenging, becomes an opportunity for growth, learning, and self-discovery. At the same time, the empath's transformation allows them to become a beacon of light for others. They no longer need to fix or save anyone. Instead, they embody the wisdom and strength that comes from walking the path of authenticity. They offer their presence as a source of inspiration, showing others that it is possible to live a life that is true to oneself, no matter how difficult the journey may be. The empath's journey of self-realization becomes a model for others to follow, creating a ripple effect of healing and transformation that extends far beyond the individual. Through this process, the empath understands the deeper truth that Carl Jung spoke of. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The empath now knows that they are not broken or incomplete. They are simply on a journey of becoming more of who they were always meant to be. And as they embrace their own authenticity, they come to understand that their unique gifts, whether it be their sensitivity, their empathy, or their ability to love deeply, are not burdens to bear, but strengths that allow them to heal and connect with others in ways that few can. However, the empath also understands that the journey is not static. It is a process of continual growth and expansion. As they move forward, they will continue to encounter new challenges, new layers of their own shadow to integrate, and new opportunities for self-discovery. But they no longer fear these challenges. They approach them with the confidence and courage that comes from knowing that they are capable of handling whatever comes their way. They understand that every challenge is simply another step in their evolution, another opportunity to become more aligned with their true self. In moving forward, the empath learns to trust the wisdom of their own heart and soul. They no longer look outside themselves for validation or answers. Instead, they trust the quiet guidance that comes from within, the whispers of their intuition, the wisdom of their soul, and the deep knowing that they are exactly where they are meant to be. With this trust, they embrace the unfolding of their life, knowing that it is leading them toward ever greater alignment with their purpose. The empath's journey is one of deep self-love, acceptance, and trust. They have learned to love themselves not in spite of their sensitivity, but because of it. They have learned to accept themselves fully, to embrace their strengths and weaknesses alike, and to move forward in life with a sense of peace and purpose. They no longer seek perfection, for they have come to understand that they are already whole. As they look ahead, the empath realizes that the journey will continue to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. They are no longer afraid of what the future holds. They are ready to embrace it with open arms, knowing that they are supported by the universe, by the community of awakening souls they are now a part of, and by the deep connection they have found with their true self. The final step of the empath's journey is not an end, but a new beginning. It is the beginning of a life lived fully, authentically, and with purpose. The empath steps forward with clarity and grace, knowing that they are the creators of their own reality and that their journey will continue to lead them toward ever greater self-realization, connection, and joy. As the empath completes this chapter of their journey, they come to realize that true peace comes from within, not from external validation, nor from fitting into a mold crafted by others, but from embracing their authentic self with love and acceptance. They have walked through the darkness, faced their deepest fears, and shed the weight of expectations. Now they stand in the light of their own truth, fully aware of their power, their worth, and their purpose. The journey doesn't end here. It continues to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways, but with each step, the empath is guided by the wisdom they've discovered within themselves. The empath understands now that they are not alone in their transformation. The universe is constantly unfolding, inviting us all to heal, grow, and live authentically. Each person's journey is unique, yet we are all connected by the same threads of vulnerability, love, and the desire for self-realization. The empath's healing is part of the collective healing, and in embracing their truth, they inspire others to do the same. If you've resonated with this journey of self-discovery, healing, and awakening, know that you are part of a greater movement, one that is rooted in self-awareness, compassion, and the courage to live authentically. Thank you for being here and for walking this path with us. If you are ready to continue exploring the depths of Carl Jung's wisdom and uncover more about the journey of individuation, spiritual awakening, and true transformation, subscribe to Jungian Soul Secrets and join our growing community of like-minded souls. Together, we'll continue to explore the mysteries of the unconscious, embrace our shadows, and step into the light of our authentic selves. You are not alone. The universe mirrors your truth,